Hi, this is Pued189, and today I am making a video because I'm too big of a dwarf fanatic. I mean, I'm a huge nerd with all things fantasy and all things weaponry and all things history. And today I just wanna I felt like giving a rant. And my friend just showed me a video from Shadiveristy. Now, if you haven't seen Shad's videos, he's a great guy, or at least he seems that I don't know him. He makes really good videos. I've seen more than a few of them, a fair amount of them, and he seems like a generally nice guy. And honestly, he makes good points. But this is a video that I am doing in reply to a video he made about dwarves and weaponry. And this is a response video. It's not like a huge critique, so it's not like I'm gonna lay into somebody. But I just want to talk about it and just to give a few points on what I heard. First, he talked about pole arms, which I highly agree with. Dwarves would probably do great wielding halberds or pole axes because, like he said, it sounds very dwarfy, and reach is always good. Uh, he said crossbows were the best for dwarves. He had no problem with that, and I agree with that as well. He knows his stuff. Uh, but I would like to contend on him saying that they should use falchions or messers instead of axes. I don't think falchions or messers would be a bad choice, but it seems like he. I mean, I don't want to assume anything about Shad, but I have been too huge of a nerd in about every fantasy series I've ever come across. And the few things he forgot about dwarves. One, dwarves, they are very short, um, but they are not small, and they do not have stubby arms either. Most dwarves look very simian, actually. Their arms are usually fairly long, um, usually like big muscles. They can reach far, pretty far actually. Like, not obviously like, I'm not saying they have greater reach than a human, but if you look at fantasy art and official art, not just concept and fan art, but official art, dwarves actually have quite a long reach. And other than that, in addition to that, he kept on saying dwarves had a comparable strength to humans. They're usually stronger. They're stronger in Warcraft. They're certainly stronger in Warhammer. Probably Lord of the Rings. It's been alluded to a few times. And also, I'd like to give a little side note. In Lord of the Rings, dwarves don't just use axes; they use swords and pikes, or maybe not pikes. I haven't read that, but they use swords and various weapons plenty. I mean, they shoot arrows and bows in Mirkwood and The Hobbit, and um, you know, they've never been like, oh, this sword, screw that. I want, give me an axe. They never do that. But Gimli uses an axe. It was Balin's axe, and that's how come it became so popular. Shad talked about using falchions instead, and something about falchions that I'm sure he knows, but he might have forgotten to mention, is that falchions are not great against armor, and falchions are also fairly thin in the blade, historical falchions. And I'm sure dwarves could make different falchions, but just for argument's sake, um, dwarves, not only are they very strong, but they also have great arc to their blows because of their stout body. That means they can deal a very great deal of power to what they're going to use it for. And if a dwarf is stronger than a human, and its body is specifically made to have power to their blows, that would blunt falchions and messers very quickly. And the easiest way to solve that is to use an axe. Dwarves often use long handled axes too, to increase the reach even more. And you could say, well, axes don't need to be the quintessential weapon of the dwarf, and I mean it'd be a good sidearm. It doesn't need to be the best. I mean, true, but axes also had points like pole axes, or dwarven axes often had points like pole axes. And two, like Shad said, they use shields, and they use shields often. And something else that he might not have mentioned, he was using purely a pragmatic point of view, which I can respect totally. But he also forgot where dwarves live, and that is underground generally. I know in Warhammer, about 2/3 of dwarves live underground, and the ones that live above ground do it out of necessity so they could farm. Or dwarves who, you know, say that they want to live above ground are considered weird and really eccentric. And underground, there is not a lot of space to maneuver, and dwarves can't maneuver very well anyway because they do have stubby legs. They might not have stubby arms, but they do have stubby legs. And if you are caught in a tunnel underground, waving around a halberd that will probably scrape a wall, um, that's a bad investment. Uh, Dwarves need to be versatile in both areas that they're going to fight in, which is both above and below ground. And an axe or a hammer is the answer to that. Um, Poleaxe, I don't disagree with, and honestly, if they knew they would be above ground, halberd, I also wouldn't disagree with. But maybe a 5 foot poleaxe at most is what I would grant them, because they need to be, like I said, they need to be versatile, and they need to be able to hold it in one hand, because they'll usually have a shield or they'll have heavy armor, which they could easily use a poleaxe with. Um, but the point is that an axe doesn't need to be a short weapon. A lot of axes are short, and they're certainly shorter than swords. But as I said, a sword would blunt very easily, and a dwarf is going to be fighting things that either have armor or that are in places where a sword could easily get scuffed and blunted. Whereas an axe, you don't need that thin of a blade. You can keep it thick, and as we know, an axe's virtues are: one, you can put a lot of power behind it. Two, it's good against at least moderate armor. And if a dwarf wanted to, hurt, very thick armor, then they have picks and they have hammers. Um, but also, an axe is also very good at tearing other shields away or unbalancing their opponent by hooking, you know, hooking an enemy's shield while keeping their own shield up. And also, an axe can be used in various other things. It can be used as a tool. It could be, and I don't mean like hewing at rock. I mean just like any kind of tool. Dwarves also go above ground. They need to chop wood and various things like that. Or a dwarf needs to cut rope underground because they need to make bridges to go across vast underground areas. Dwarvish culture has a great need for axes and hammers and picks, and does not have a lot of room for pole arms. And if a dwarf has heavy armor and a dwarf has a heavy shield, uh, and they're fighting an enemy, the only really time they need to use something that would help them reach is if they were chasing after an enemy. And if they're doing that, then they'll already have crossbows. But if an enemy's coming to them, an enemy's going to come to them. And whether the enemy has reach or not, the dwarf is not only tougher than a human, but they're heavily armored and heavily shielded. That's essentially like a medieval knight on steroids. A tank, to use a gaming term or a military term. Um, and an axe would, and if an enemy gets close, they're going to get close, and they will get killed by a dwarf with an axe. Particularly a dwarf that has long simian arms and a long handle, or a dwarf that doesn't have a shield and uses a double bladed axe or what have you. Like I said earlier, a dwarf's stout body and powerful arms gives it a really powerful swing, and it could probably chop, especially with dwarven, forging techniques, which in every fantasy universe is pretty much the best. Could probably chop through enemy armor pretty easily, whereas a falchion could not. Now, I'm not saying a falchion's a terrible weapon. Like I said earlier, I could easily see falchions when it comes to and messers when it comes to sidearms. Um, but there are reasons that fantasy universes use the axe, um, and has to do not only with practical uses but also dwarvish culture and also the various historical influences that the dwarves go off of, like the Norse. Um, and the Norse often didn't have the money for swords, and axes were also arguably better in one-handed weapon and shield combat. And so most Norsemen, if they weren't using spears, they're using axes. Um, so I mean, it's just a bunch of things that go into that. But all I'm saying is that dwarves do use axes for reasons. But at the same time, Shad did make really good points, and this isn't an argument video. I just want to bring that out there. And this is just me being picky about dwarves because they are by far my favorite fantasy race, other than the lizardmen. Dwarves and the lizardmen, that's me, which is why I've only made dwarvish Warhammer videos so far, essentially. One on the Skaven, but fuck Skaven. Don't tell Arch I said that. The point is that yeah, I just had to say it. And also, I highly recommend. And I didn't get my ideas from this, but I also want to show this off. This book, The Lord of the Rings: Weapons and Warfare. This book is I got this years ago. In fact, I think it's like a from 2005 or something like that. I actually need to find the frickin' yeah. This is Houghton Mifflin Company, Boston, New York, 2003. Um, this is when the movies or Lord of the Rings movies came out, and this actually, while it doesn't get a lot of information from the books, it has great information and great pragmatic reasons for different kinds of Lord of the Rings factions using the arms and armor they have. And I honestly thought, if I'm going to make this video, I want to show this off too. Um, but there you have it. Shad, if you're watching this, I love the videos. Keep it up. I just wanted to give my own 2 cents. And anyone else, I am now in the middle of making a video on Sparta, and I hope people watch that. I'm also going to make Warhammer for Idiots extra bits, and then I'm going to make some more dwarvish or dwarfin Warhammer videos. Warhammer dwarfs use dwarf and not dwarves. That's a Lord of the Rings invention. Either way, I'm sorry. But I just want to say, okay, everyone have a good day. It's 4 in the morning right now.